Let's go to Todd here. Hello, Todd. How's it
Hey
going?
Bart, how's it going?
Todd, have you called the show before? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I had a Bellagio 5-10 hand where I lost like a $10,000 pot
Oh,
with
wow.
aces.
Oh, wow. Quite. Yeah, that's right.
We double blocked both flushes and
Yep. Yeah, that was interesting. Well, we'll put that one up in we'll put that one on the link. So you got a hand out of the Win Vegas. Is that, if I remember?
yes, yes.
All right.
Win 2-5.
So that is, did they change the structures recently there or something like that?
So
The buying structures?
before the series, they brought a cap into 5-10, which is now
Okay.
3K.
Uh-huh.
They left the 2-5 the same. It's still a 1,500 cap.
Have you found that the game has changed at all since they brought
So
the 510 cap in?
I haven't put a ton of time into this game over the last year and a half, but it definitely feels softer at times than it did prior.
Hmm.
So I think that that's kind of drawn a lot of the better players that really wanted to be playing 5-10, but didn't want to play the uncapped, 10, 20K buy-in.
Hmm. Yeah, because that 510 game was ridiculous. Is when it was uncapped, it was one of the biggest public games in the city, right?
Yes.
Probably bigger than 1020 at Bellagio.
Yeah, I was probably close. I mean, it was 10, 20, 40 at all, or yeah, 5, 10,
510.
20 at all times.
Okay. So 2-5, 1500 cap at the Win. Okay. At the Win in Vegas, not
Yes,
Boston.
nine-handed. It's the only strip property that's still nine-handed, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
This is my third orbit, and I've been buying in for 1K just to kind of minimize some variance and some big hands if I can. Initially, we have two limps up front, under the gun and +1, both limp. And then hijack, he's got about 900, raises to 15. Cutoff has about 1,800, so he's covering us. He calls, and then I call on the button with red deuces, and then the limpers fold.
So UTG and +1 limp, hijack to 15, cutoff calls. Isn't that kind of a, I mean, I'm not going to question calling here with deuce deuce, but isn't that a little bit strange that this guy just made it 15 over two limpers? I mean, isn't the standard open even if it's small to 15?
Yes, definitely. So, like I said, it was only my third orbit, but I did pick up a couple reads on both of these guys. Pretty certain both are wrecks, just from the showdowns I'd seen and the frequency of hands that they've been playing. Hijack's been playing well over half of the hands in the first two orbits, doing things like limp calling with ace-6 offsuit, getting there, winning a hand. He's also lost a couple of medium-sized pots. So, yeah, opening to 15 is definitely small.
This is definitely one that I've talked about this situation many, many times before, where it's almost like free money, but I wouldn't do it with your hand. Whenever you see somebody open to pre-flop, I'm talking about for a raise size that would be like there were no limpers, but there are limpers, that's almost never a strong hand. So in this case, like he's opening what he would open with no limpers, but there are limpers. There's two limpers. Then you have this guy to your right call. And it's like, what is going on here? The only time this is ever strong is if actually someone's trying to do this intentionally to induce a three bet. So if I were you on the button and I had any type of high card-ish suited connected playability, this would become a slam dunk three bet. Like I'm talking like, 5-6 suited plus, right? I don't really like to do it with deuce deuce though, just because there's just no playability whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's probably if the table's passive enough, I'm fine with calling. But with almost any other hand that I VPIP in this spot besides small pairs, I would probably three bet. I don't know if you were going to do that based upon the setup.
I would tend to three bet off like a lot of suited broadways here, suited
Yeah.
connectors that are on the upper end of
Yeah. The limpers fold. That's really shocking. These guys, UTG and +1 limp for 5, it goes 15 call, and the limpers fold for 10 more? What the hell's going on here?
So after this hand and then a few more orbits later, I realized that there were basically no regs in this game. So
Yeah.
it was playing a lot more like a 1-2 or 1-3.
Yeah. So the pot's like $60, something like
Yep,
that?
60 in the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
And the flop is King 7 Deuce Rainbow, King of Hearts, 7 of diamonds, and Deuce of Spades.
You said you had two red deuces. Is that
Yes,
right?
I did. Yep.
All right. So deuce of hearts. So King 7 deuce rainbow. That's a pretty good flop for you.
Super, super static, I would say.
Yep.
Hijack bets 15, and then not a snap raise, but cutoff raises to 65 pretty quickly.
So hijack bets 15. So he bet really small, right?
Mm-hmm.
And cutoff snap raises to 60. All right,
65, yep.
65. All right, this is great because what do these things represent? And it's all about the sizing here. I mean, this is just drawn from live experience. There are certain sizing types of setups that will typically fall into pretty consistent patterns in sizing of something post flop. I mean, when you take a look at this entire hand, usually people don't raise with top pair all that much, especially like a high top pair. You'll see top pair raises when people, think they need protection. So I've seen it tend to be more like on, say, like 9, 10 jack high boards with like king jack, you know what I mean? They just don't want to. So you see it less often on a king high board. But with that being said, though, the hijack is betting 15 in a 60. I think the cutoff can have a king X here all day long. Now, it would be one thing if the guy like bet 50 and then the cutoff raised to 200, where it would start to be, oh, that might just be like ace king or like, kings up plus. But here it could be any king, right? So what I would start to, I mean, obviously you didn't have the luxury of knowing. By the way, how deep were you guys? I'm sorry.
So hijack had like 900 to start. I had just under 1,000, and then cutoff had us both covered pretty heavily.
All right, so
like 1,800 or so.
All right, so it's 1,000 effective with the cutoff who snap raises. Here's the thing about this is that I think this represents a king a lot. Now you're in position, so the question then becomes, how do you try to get the most amount of money from a king? And are you ever concerned that like if you put in the 3-bet that that's somehow gonna like get king jack or king 10 to fold? I mean, obviously the cutoff doesn't have pocket kings, and it's just one of these things where if he has 7s, you're gonna lose your stack. It is what it is. I'm not even thinking about that. We're just thinking about the way that how do you maximize here? How do you maximize against king X here that might only be a single pair?
Right. Yeah. So that was my thought exactly. I considered 3-betting here, but then with how bad hijack has been playing, I really want him to stay in the pot if he can. And I don't know if anything else calls other than 7s if we do 3-bet, even with the cutoff raise there. That was kind of my feeling in game.
By the way, I did a pod, just as an aside, I did a podcast on about blind play last week on the site. And this one kind of reminds me of a situation in the blinds when in a limped pot, you can actually sometimes take bottom pair and bluff with it in a limped pot coming out of the blinds when the board distribution is such that the top and the middle card would always be raised pre-flop if they had a set. The reason why, so for example, like if it came out like king 8 deuce and people limped in and you think that someone's always raising with 8-8 and you had like deuce 4 in the blind, someone doesn't have 8-8 or king king. So, and you block bottom set. So there's not a whole lot of strong hands, like really strong hands that can be out there. Here, what this reminds me of is if you're saying that you might only get action here from like 7-7 or something like that. If you, for some reason, had like a 7 in your hand, say you didn't 3-bet like 7-8 suited here, even though we talked about you would, like say you had 7-8 of spades and you saw this action of bet 15 cutoff raises to 65. It might be a pretty good play to actually 3-bet 7-8 for this reason. That's not what we want to do though. Here. We want to keep them in. I go back and forth with this one though, Todd, because I feel like you could just click this up to like 150 and there's no way a king is going to fold. Now, the board's not that draw heavy, so you don't have to really worry that much about sort of action killing cards. But once you cold call the raise, let's say the hijack gets out of there, you might be reflected with the check here a lot, in meaning like the cutoff might check to you a lot on the turn, just the sheer fact that you've cold called the raise. And if that's the case, then flatting doesn't really do all that much unless you say, well, he's always folding out on the flop, so he's going to check call the turn. That's kind of why I would sort of lend myself to like clicking it up here a little bit. You know what I mean? With these stack sizes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
My other thought too was, I mean, we're in position, so I can still do that on the turn.
Yeah, but then it looks even stronger though. It looks even
Yeah.
stronger against, one pair, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you just call or what?
Yes, I just call, and then hijack ends up calling as well.
Oh, really? So hero calls and the hijack calls.
Hmm.
So, I mean, these both, again, I can't really worry about having, I mean, if the guy's got 7-7, I'm going to tap the table, but sure, there are 4 kings in the deck. But I mean, these would be the most logical hands, right? That both the hijack and the cutoff have king X.
Right.
So hijack goes 15, cutoff snap raise to 65, hero calls at about 1,000 effective, and the hijack calls. So you put in just under 200, so it's like 255 to the turn.
Yep, that's what I've got.
Okay.
Turn is the 8 of hearts.
Okay, so puts a backdoor heart draw out there. King of hearts, 7 of diamonds, deuce of spades, turns the 8 of hearts. Okay. Uh-huh.
Hijack checks, and then cutoff now goes for a larger sizing and bets 185. My plan initially was to actually raise a lot of bets, but he's going pretty large compared to the pot multi-way, and I did like a little SPR in my head, and even if I min clicked, I didn't love what I was going to be left behind with on the river. I mean, I guess I shouldn't worry about it with deuces here.
What do you mean you didn't love how much you're like if you went up to like? Well, I mean, you're never folding if you min click.
No.
I mean, that's the whole. I mean, so it could be one of these things where if again, going back to what we talked about in the last call, maybe it looks more bluffy. So, although as the pot gets larger, I actually don't think it looks more bluffy. I was gonna say, like, if you're always gonna call off, then you're supposed to just sort of just jam, right? Because if you go up to like 400 here, you only have like 500 behind, right?
Right. Yeah, and I didn't want to leave myself with like half pot. That's not an SPR I like to leave myself on the river.
Really? For value? Why not?
Just because I never bluff with that amount, so that's the only reason, really. I'd prefer to have like 3/4 pot if I can.
Yeah, but are those guys do those guys know that?
I don't think they're paying attention enough at all. So
I mean, here's the thing. So if you call, and let's say, let me try to say the other guy gets out of the way. So the pot's we put in 370 here on the turn. The pot would be, we don't know the other guy's getting out of the way. The pot would be 625 if you just call, and then you're gonna have like 750. You're gonna have over a pot size bet, right? I don't know. I kind of want to get some money in here. No, I mean, if you, let's say that cutoff bets 185, you call, and then you've got, like I said, you've got 700 left, and the pot's, 625, and then the river's like a brick, and he checks. What was going to be your sizing at the end?
I think I'd still rip it in, but I mean,
Really,
that might get some folds. So I think I would just have to evaluate on what happened on the river.
It's really hard to have a bluff. This is why I actually like to get money in early on in the hand, because now I actually see a situation where you get way more one pair types of holdings to fold when you wait for a later street to raise, and you get more action earlier on. It is interesting that this guy is continuing, for 185, and he doesn't seem like he's all that concerned about you two guys. I don't know if he thinks ace king is the nuts and that's flatted off or what, but interesting. So did you call again?
I just flat for those reasons with SPR, like I said, and then hijack calls again.
Yeah. People in the live chat saying jam, jam, jam. Of course, no one can have king X of hearts. It's king of hearts, 7 of diamonds, deuce of spades, turns the 8 of hearts. So now we put in 370, 555. Looks like the pot is 810. And again, you have about 700 left. So now you actually do have less than a pot size bet left. Okay.
Right.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So the river is the jack of clubs.
Okay.
And hijack has about 600 left behind and decides to lead for 400.
So he leads for 400 of his 600.
Yes.
That is very, very bizarre. I mean, that has to be just, that would be, I mean, unless it's literally pocket kings, pocket sevens, and pocket deuces, which is like 1 in a million. I mean, that would make sense. What I mean by that is like, and then of course the guy in the hijack would have to just call again on the turn. I'm trying to think of like what this is. This should be almost always king jack from this guy, unless specifically like the hijack has kings, the other guy has sevens, and the hijack was just playing it super slow. But it really should be king jack here quite a bit.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like I would have expected to see kings do something more aggressive at some point in this hand prior to now.
Right. Once you get, bet and call on turn and stuff. Plus there's two draws. Now, what does the guy in the middle do?
He decides to jam pretty quickly again for he covers both of us, so he jams about 700.
So hijack leads for 400, and then cutoff jams for 700.
Yeah, and I went into the tank for about a minute, which is pretty long for me.
So it's 1900. It's right now. It's 1900, 700 for you to call, but of course it's really 21 because the hijack's going to call off the last two, right? He only has two in front of him.
Right.
So it's really 2100, 700 for you to call. So you're getting 3 to 1. I mean, the dude in the middle has actually played it like he actually has 7-7 here.
Yeah, and that's what I was going through in my head when I was tanking. I was like, do I ever get shown anything other than pocket sevens right here?
I mean, here's another thing though. So let's say we'll get back to what actually happened here, but say it goes 400 call. I assume you're going to raise all in, right? On the river?
Yes.
If it went 400 call, you have to raise all in.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You have to raise all in. So, I mean, and then maybe once in a while you get shown something very strange here. Todd, there's another hand here too, which is like eights trying to find out where they're at on the flop that turned a set. That's another one, but I don't know, man. I mean, with all this weird sizing getting 3 to 1, it's just very, very hard for me to fold sets whenever I see some, wacky behavior. You should, like I said, you should almost never be behind the hijack. I don't think that's what you're worried about. You're worried about the cutoff having 7-7, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I ended up thinking for about a minute or so and ultimately decided that, like you said earlier, if they've got sevens, we're just getting stacked anyways. So I ended up calling off, and then hijack calls off as well, his last 200.
Okay, what's the hand?
Cutoff instantly says, oh, I can't win this hand then if you both call, and he tables king 10 offsuit.
What is he doing?
I don't have an answer for that.
This is what I'm talking about. This is why I said, like, you always have to have this sort of in your back of your head. Like, it would be one thing. So you saying cutoff has king 10 off. Okay, so here's the thing about that play. The only time that would ever make any sense is if, and it's not on this board, is if he somehow thinks that he's behind to you, which is probably correct, right? You go cold call. He probably doesn't have the best hand with king 10, right? Against you. And then he somehow thinks the hijack like missed a draw, but there's no draw. Why is he putting money in to knock you out when he never is going to have the hijack beaten here? Right?
Yeah. I don't get it either.
I mean, this is the type of shit that you see. It's funny. You would never really see this, but a few calls ago, there was a guy on the live stream that was really bent out of shape about, this other opponent, like trying to say that he had to see his hand, even though the other guy won the hand, right? And he demanded to see the caller's hand was a losing hand. And I was like, yeah, it sucks. It's like in poor form. But part of the reason why you have the right to see people's hands is because of collusion. So say the hijack led, right? And then the cutoff raised here. And then you folded and somehow like the hijack, you somehow saw the hands. I'd almost think that you were cheated. Do you follow what I'm saying? Cheated in the sense of like collusion. Like that would be like a collusion type of hand. Here, it's just a button click. It just makes no sense. But if the hijack led and then this guy raised with king 10 off and then somehow the hijack folded and you got to see what happened, I would think I'd be colluded against. You know what I mean? It makes absolutely no sense. But okay, so the cutoff has king 10 off and then what's the hijack have?
I show,
Uh,
and then hijack like has little hand funeral and mucks
and you
and
never,
claimed that he turned top two,
that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it?
king eight. No, but like I said, he was opening ace six offsuit under the gun. Uh, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't try to justify some of these guys.
By the way, do you, and also, well, nice call there. And again, sort of going to the craziness factor. But by the way, too, you know what I'm saying, Todd? Because I forgot about the amount of money set up here, right? So go to the river. Let's say you go to the river, right? And, I think maybe like a better, I don't know how often you'd be in this spot because obviously you didn't fold deuce, deuce. Say somehow you had like king seven suited and you called on the button, right? So you had top two instead of having deuce, deuce, right? And the same action goes down. Bet, raise, call, turns an eight, check, bet, you call with king seven for kings up, right? Call, call. Now, 8-10 right on the river. The hijack now on the river with 600 in his stack bets 400. Okay. Now the guy in the middle raises all in for 700. Okay. You fold. And now the hijack folds, leaving 200. That's where I would think that I would be cheated. Yeah. That's where I would feel like I think I would be colluded against. So it's just a really bizarre play by the cutoff. But anyways, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.